Hello, hello, hello. Again, before we get started this week, I wanted to remind you that you can participate in a project that I'm working on for this podcast. I'm doing a whole episode on mammals, and I want to hear your story. I want to hear about your mammal. I think mammal is kind of a loose term, it doesn't have to be your biological mammal or just like a mammal figure in your life. I want to hear about them. So, if you have a story you want to share about your mammal or a special memory, please send a voice memo or transcript to mountainlaurelspod@gmail.com, and you'll be featured in the season 1 finale. I will hopefully be doing a season 2. But the season 1 finale, be featured in the season 1 finale of this podcast. That's mountainlaurelspod@gmail.com. I have already read so many cool stories, and I'm excited to share them. Please send me more. And if you could please send them by May 9th, that would be amazing, so I can put that episode together. Loretta Lynn has always been a constant in my life. When I was growing up, I lived in Floyd County, but went to school in Johnson County. What that meant was every day on my way to school, I'd pass a sign for Butcher Holler, home of Loretta Lynn. Turn here and go to the Loretta Lynn home place. I saw Coal Miner's Daughter at a really young age, and I always remember my dad talking about Loretta as if she were a family member. He actually called her Loretty all the time. Anytime a song of hers would come on the radio, there's Loretty. I love Loretta Lynn. All of her music, her persona, the way she carried herself. But I think we have to acknowledge that she was a complicated figure. In this week's episode, I had a chance to talk to Shawna Kay Rodenberg. In 2021, I read her piece, Maybe Dolly is the Goal, but Loretta is the Truth, which was published by Elle magazine. If you've never read it, Google it. You don't have to read it to listen to this episode, but you should definitely read it. It's a really enlightening piece. I always remember Dolly and Loretta getting oddly pitted against each other, but it seems like they would get pitted against each other just because they were two successful country music musicians that happened to be from the same region. But they're so different in so many ways. I was really excited to talk about Loretta. I'm always excited to talk about Loretta. She inspired my hair at my wedding. When I say she's been a constant in my life, she's truly been a constant in my life. I hope that you will enjoy this week's episode. Well, I'm excited to talk about Loretta, but also I reread your piece, and I had read it like in 2021 when it was first published, and I was like, oh, this is like, because I feel like are you okay if this is like the beginning of the podcast?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best. I can tell you straight out of the gate, I'm going to have a better conversation the less formal it is.
Same.
Like the more formal we are, the more nervous I'll get, and I'll start talking all over myself, and
Listen, that's exactly how I am. I just like to jump in. I don't even have people introduce themselves, and that is on purpose. Because I'm like, I will introduce you in the beginning. I promise I'll tell people all about you. But this just needs to be a conversation.
I'm not worried about it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's great. Yeah, let's just jump right in.
Yeah, so I read the piece, and I should say the title of the piece is I Want to Get It Right. This is a one formal thing I'll do here. Maybe Dolly is the goal, but Loretta is the truth. And it was published online for Elle. And I read it in 2021 when it originally came out. And I was like, yeah, this is like, I think there is, especially with Appalachian women, or maybe it's just me. I don't know. I don't like to think I'm the only one. But there is this sort of like, are you a Loretta or are you a Dolly?
Yeah.
Which has always befuddled me because I'm like, they're both amazing. Who cares?
Yeah. They are. They are.
For,
They really are.
for different reasons, right? But the title is what grabbed me, of course. The Loretta is the truth part. And so I grew up in Floyd County. I went to school in Johnson County. So I went to school with a lot of Loretta's kin and like was friends with them. And, you know, it was always like she always felt more real. And I hadn't really understood why. And then when I read your piece, I was like, oh, it's because like that she never hid her struggle. Not that Dolly hid her struggle, but her struggle was like different. Like Dolly's struggle was like coat of many colors, right? Like we struggled, but everything is beautiful and everything can be beautiful.
Right.
And Loretta's struggle is like...
And everyone is gentle.
Yeah.
Everyone is gentle, yeah.
And Loretta's is coal miner's daughter. And I went home and guess what? It still isn't great.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
So I'm wondering like what inspired you to write it and sort of like how you were thinking about these two people as you were writing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, for starters, like I have been fans of both of them for as long as I can remember. That's not an exaggeration. Like one of the very first songs I remember hearing, secular songs, because my family was pretty strict and we didn't listen to the radio and stuff when I was a little girl for a long time. But Dolly's Coat of Many Colors was one of the very first songs I remember hearing. You know, like my mom made space for me to hear that song in spite of their rules and such. It's a very important song to her. And then I also grew up with my cousins who were in the movie Coal Miner's Daughter. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit. I was sort of fascinated by the whole idea of it. I think for the longest time, I Sissy Spacek was Loretta Lynn. Like, I didn't really know the difference, you know, because I was that little when I saw the movie. Like, I don't remember ever having not seen the movie, kind of, which is because I led a pretty sheltered childhood. So I didn't really see a lot of you know, secular content, but I still always knew about these two women. And then I think in 2020, 2021, when I started writing the essay, Dolly was having like a moment, you know, and people had fallen in love with her, like finally. The whole world had, kind of, you know, it took them a long time. And it just made me want to celebrate Loretta too, because I sort of see them as like two sides of the same coin, maybe two ways of being from the mountains, you know, two experiences of it. To me, they always seemed to play out that way, you know. And Loretta, I think, especially because I knew enough about her to know that her politics were problematic in some ways. I was like preemptively or like anticipatorily like trying to protect her. I think I felt protective of her. I was afraid people were going to jump on her and cancel her because she was all over the place politically, you know? And so I just kind of wanted to get out ahead of that. I felt possessive and protective of her, I guess, is all of it in a nutshell. Because it's like, Dolly, I get that. I'm so glad everybody fell in love with her. I'm so glad she's having this moment where she's queen, you know?
Also, at this time, like, she was funding the Moderna vaccine.
Yes.
In a big way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she was having her moment, for sure.
Yeah. Her definitely. And also just like really good at like staying above the fray. Like, I don't think anybody does that better than Dolly does.
It
Like,
is amazing to witness, truly.
yeah, without being like, it's not because she cowers or she doesn't say what she thinks. Like, somehow she manages to make her position clear while also making space for other people.
Loretta was pretty outspoken politically about where she was. I mean, most recently. And what's interesting to me is like Dolly has never endorsed anyone, to my
No.
knowledge. But one of my friends made a really good point, and it was after this most recent election, Taylor Swift had endorsed Kamala, which everyone had been waiting for, you know,
Right,
the Swiftie
right,
army. And then it was
right.
like 2 weeks later, if that, Dolly says something positive about Taylor Swift out of nowhere. And they were like, that is as
Yeah.
close as Dolly will come to ever endorsing a candidate. And I was like, that's it. That's what she does. That's
It's
brilliant.
so true. It's
It's
so true. Or she'll like make a joke about, I'm not a politician, because I'm not crooked, or, she'll just be sort of like irreverent generally to politicians. Um, but Loretta she didn't have that way of staying above and floating above the political conflict that is just part of all of our lives all the time now, you know?
yeah,
Um,
I know.
just every moment of every day, all the time.
It's like, what's
Um,
gonna happen next? I don't know.
it's fine. It's not fine. And I think I just felt and I think it's because, my mom too, I think I always saw like my mother, she definitely inhabited the world as a Loretta. My mom did. And, also voted for Hillary, also voted for Kamala, and yet was in some ways just so churchy and, old fashioned in like sometimes in such an extreme way that, again, if you caught her at the wrong moment, you might misunderstand her. And that was kind of how I felt Loretta's politics played out. Like, if you looked at things she said about the pill, um, then you were all set.
Yeah.
If you looked at things that she said about how husbands are supposed to be taken care of, like, like it just runs the gamut,
Right.
like she performed, I think, was it for 6, 7, 8 presidents in the course of her life, Loretta did, um, and voted for both Democrats and Republicans among them. Like, I think basically voted for every president she met. I think she did it. I don't know,
How many
but
people can say that?
yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, she kind of, if she'd met them, if they'd invited her, it seemed like that she was comfortable endorsing them. And it did. So yeah, I didn't want her to get canceled,
Yeah, and you say
preemptively.
right, and you say in the piece, I wrote this down. Some make peace with a complicated world through division and duality, through easy definitions of good and bad. This worldview is a luxury many Appalachians simply don't have and never had. And I think it's really interesting that you call it a luxury because I 100% agree with that. And the reason I think like that doesn't really exist here is in a place like Letcher County where you're from, you could have someone, maybe I would never say wealthy, but like someone that's not hurting, like not poor, not
Mhm.
considered poor, maybe middle class, verging on
Right.
upper middle class, living next to
Daddy
someone.
owns BP station or something. Yeah. That's usually what it is, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Their daddy owns a BP station or car wash, and
Yeah, or
yeah,
both. The
yeah, or both.
the BP car wash.
Yeah,
Um, and then right next to him could be living somebody that's on the poverty line. So you're getting
it's so true.
exposure. You're getting this exposure, and it's like you understand. I would almost argue outside of like demographics, like racial demographics, there's so much more class exposure in a place like Appalachia than there is someone living on the Upper East Side of New York City.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can attest to that because I've spent a lot of time, a mixture of places, and I can say that politically, sometimes I have a more difficult time being in a place like Los Angeles, and it's not because I like harbor secret conservative tendencies. not, that's not what it is. It's because I feel like talking about politics in the mountains, it always feels to me like maybe more honest, or more people are more honest about why they feel the way they do. And I feel like I've been in spaces sometimes where the politics were technically left, um, where I felt like the whole point of the space I was in was exclusion, and like being better than, and being superior to, you know? And so I think what you're saying is exactly right. It has something to do with like proximity to struggle. And also, like, even if you have money, if you live in Letcher County, then you know what it takes to like get a library funded there, or to get broadband, or to get, like, you understand, like you're gonna feel the pinch of the mountains, even if you I think even if you have money. That's not to say that it's not a beautiful place to live and be and work, you know, but regional poverty is real. And um, there's not a fresh market in Letcher County.
No.
You know, there's not a Whole Foods, there's not a, you know what I'm saying? I don't think there's still not a Starbucks, is there?
There is in the
Is
food
there now?
city.
In the food city,
Yeah.
okay. There you
Yep.
go, there you go. So, like, even something like if you're talking about, boycotting Starbucks, which I do here, like, I do that here because I can get coffee anywhere. It's a little more complicated when you're in a space where you don't have all these different businesses to choose from, and you're you maybe just got the Starbucks and are kind of excited about it, and then everybody's like, like, oh crap, we can't even do Starbucks, so
That was literally
anyway.
me a year ago. I was like, "Really,
Was it
guys?
really?
I can't boycott Walmart. What?
I know. Where would you
Where
go?
am I going to get my
Where would
body wash?"
I know. So it's like it's just a different set of, I think, problems. And so, I think problems that maybe feel a little more real to me, a little less like ideological and heady and intellectual, and a little more about like, how are we going to eat? You know, um, when are we going to get, I mean, when I was teaching for KCTCS, I was teaching these dual credit students, high school and college English, and there was a class of my students that had been moved into the whole high school had been moved into an elementary school because there had been an issue with the foundation of their high school, so it was condemned, and they couldn't get a school built. They'd been trying for years. They finally did. That's all resolved, but a little different situation than Like, the problems that they're facing are a different degree of, like, um, what's the word? Shaky infrastructure, you know? Like, we talk a lot about how the infrastructure in America is, like, crumbling, the bridges are not this and the what have you, and I always think, like, that's just the way people live where I grew up, you
Right.
know? And I think I talk about this a little bit in the essay, but I think that um, the reason that people malign and make fun of the mountains a lot of the time, this is my theory, is that um, Appalachia represents like the failures of capitalism, what can go wrong when it's not checked, like how much interest companies actually have in their employees, after they get what they want. Um, so, like, if you want to see the dark side of capitalism, that's where you go, you know?
100%.
And so, I guess ultimately, when I talk about being in spaces where I feel like maybe people aren't being authentic about their politics, or telling the truth, it's because they don't want to acknowledge how comfortable they are in the system that we have and how uncomfortable, like a swath, many swaths, it's not just the mountains, but many marginalized communities live in such discomfort all the time. And capitalism has not served them well. And the stock market has not served them well. And so this idea that like the only way I think that certain kind of liberal capitalist can handle that idea is by sort of making fun and deciding that the failure is the people, right? It's not the system, it's the people. Like they're just not smart enough, they just don't work hard enough, which is like, okay, now you sound like a Republican. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I didn't mean to go get that political, but that to me, that's what it's all about. It's like, and Loretta, I feel like she just was never as good a capitalist as Dolly is, you
Bingo.
know.
That, listen, that is my theory 100%. So I don't know if you know this, or this might be a strictly Johnson County Facebook thing, which I'm entrenched in since I went to Johnson Central. But there is there's this notion that Loretta should have turned Eastern Kentucky into Pigeon Forge.
You know what? I am writing about this right now.
Really? Oh my gosh. Oh, I would love to hear your
I
opinion on this. I don't want to spoil whatever you're writing, but
well,
I just so there's this whole notion that she should have done this, and there's a there was a petition, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, to change the name of Paintsville Lake State Park, which is like the nearest city to Butcher Holler, to Loretta Lynn State Park. And I thought, yeah, that would be awesome. Like, why would you not do that?
right.
But there were so many people that came out and they were like, no, she has not done a thing for this area. She has not done a thing
Oh,
for this region. Like, they're very anti. I am not going to post on Facebook about this. I'm a lurker strictly. Like, I'm just looking at other people's opinions.
wow.
But
I did not know this.
it's the
I did not
whole,
know
yeah, it's the whole notion that
wow.
like she's not done anything, because why isn't why isn't
Yeah.
Paintsville and the surrounding counties Sevierville,
This is what
Tennessee?
I'm talking about. This
Yeah,
is what I'm talking about.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm very
So
interested to hear.
did you know that I think it was in 1960, um, there was a proposal in Whitesburg. You can look this up. This is one of the many things I'm right about right now and can't keep up with any of it. But there was a proposal for a place they were going to call it. It was basically going to be Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg in Letcher County. It was like water parks and resorts and blah, 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 blah. And call it Cloud City. And I swear to God, and it went on for years. They had people signed up, they had funding. They were so close to making this happen. Harry Cottle, Night Comes to the Cumberlands, he was part of it. Um, Webb from the Mountain Eagle, Gish, and then of course Wiley Webb. Anyway, they were all part of this movement to create this resort. And there were people that didn't think it should happen and people that did think it should happen. It was this close to going through. And then Kennedy, the money was supposed to come from this grant that Kennedy, and I don't have the information in front of me, and it's probably been a year since I've looked at it, but he was supposed to be creating these federal grants for rural spaces to develop. And he wrapped up that grant into a proposal for civil rights. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but he connected what would have been funding for Cloud City to his civil rights efforts, and Congress shot it down. And so the money for Cloud City got shot down at the same time that the civil rights bill, act, whatever that he was proposing was also shut down. So I just always think that's the most interesting story because basically people of color and Appalachians got the shaft at exactly the same time in this very profound, very tangible way. Like Kennedy was pulling for both of us, and neither of us got what we wanted.
This whole thing with Cloud City and or whatever the funding would have been for Cloud City and the civil rights movement, all that getting the shaft at the same time is exactly what's happening right now with the war on DEI or whatever. I don't even know what they're calling it at this point, but it's just like um I told so many people before the election, I'm like, you need to understand that Appalachia is part of DEI because Appalachia, the whole region, is an underserved community.
Did you see the news today about Hindman
No.
and the settlement school there and their programs for children with autism and dyslexia and I'm trying to think of I think that there is like a program, many programs. There are many programs for children with learning disabilities, and their funding has been cut, and they need $250,000 just to finish out the year. That just happened today. So it's like you are exactly right. That is, that's the thing. And I wish that I were a different kind of person. Sometimes I wish that I were a different kind of person and I could like enjoy that people get what they
Voted for.
voted for or deserve, but I just don't think about it that way. And for starters, those children didn't vote for any of that. And so what a weird way to think about politics anyway. Like the people that are being harmed are not necessarily even the parents of the children. It's
Right.
the children, you know. But also beyond that, I just feel like, when you're talking about people who politically can be confusing or paradoxical, I always just wish that we could acknowledge how little civic education we have in the country, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because I feel like people don't know, for example, what tariffs are. Um, people don't know um, how funding for FAFSA works, Pell Grants, you know? So, I mean, I also feel like a lot of it has to do with how much, and I'm not talking about dyed in the wool MAGA Trumpers. I'm talking about people who, maybe didn't vote for him last time, but voted for him this time, um, or vice versa. And, and just understanding that they really didn't know. Some of them really didn't know what it was going to be, you
Right.
know?
And I think that's, there's a whole propaganda machine making sure that they'll never understand that.
Constantly. I had a funny interaction when my kids go to school in East Tennessee, and I was going to go see them. And this was like right after the election had happened. It was like mid-November, end of November, I think. And this man, I was in my in my in-laws Volkswagen. He clocked my politics. Because I was like not talking about, I was getting my coffee from McDonald's on the way home from taking my kids back to school. And he came up to me. This man just sort of comes out of nowhere and starts talking about Biden's son Hunter and how he'd pardoned him and this, you know. And he was like red faced right out of the gate, just furious, you know. And I'm like, kind of smile and nod, like it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, I got to get on the road. I don't know why we're talking like, okay, all right, sir, all right. I do not want to get shot in Lee County, Virginia. That is not what I'm going for. He's like really mad, you know. And so, anyway, he's like ranting and ranting and ranting and ranting. And I bet she voted for Biden and this and that. And, he's so angry. And like, this is after they won. They won. They won, and he's so pissed. And so I like go out to my car to pay, I'm trying to pay for the gas. And of course, the pay at pump thing isn't working. So I have to go back to the damn gas station, you know. And I go on the other side because he's still at the McDonald's, and I can hear him screaming. Like he's still mad. And he's saying, I bet she voted for Biden. I bet she voted for Biden. And all I could think was that he was saying I voted for Biden and not Kamala. Like it just hit me that he was like an election behind. Like,
Mm.
you know what I mean? And also that, like, he didn't even talk about her. Like, she wasn't even, like, handed it in his mind. I was so stunned by that. Like, I didn't vote for Biden in this election. I voted for Kamala,
Yeah.
But, like, in his mind, it was still some sort of, like, war between Trump and Biden, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's just
Anyway,
it befuddles the mind truly, like some of that stuff, and there is so much anger packed in it. And so there's this. You were talking a little bit before about how, like, these stories that we do see about the region are always uh,
embarrassing,
embarrassing.
humiliating. Yeah.
And I remember after Trump first got elected, it was like the New York Times came in and was like, find me somebody who comes from a coal family that voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012, but they voted for Trump in 2016. And I was like, when I was reading your piece earlier, rereading it, I was like, Loretta Lynn, they're looking for Loretta.
They totally were. Because like I said, you could catch her, like in one conversation, she'd sound like the most like the strongest second wave feminist you'd ever heard.
Yep.
And in another conversation, she's talking about how women need to submit. And in another conversation, she's talking about how coal keeps the light on, and then in another conversation, she's talking about how coal bosses are the devil. So it's like you just couldn't pin her down
Right.
politically.
And that in that guy at the gas station, to me, it's like, in 4 years, what is he going to be mad about?
Oh, I know.
It could
Yeah.
be totally different, and I think that's, like, the
He'll
interesting
still be
thing.
mad, I guarantee
He'll
you
still be
that.
mad, and
He'll still be
honestly,
mad.
like, I think there's very good reason to be angry if you are from this region and if you've seen what capitalism actually, uh, does
Yes.
to a region.
Yes. I do too. I do
So
too.
but it's like the
That's why the
blame.
only thing I said to him the whole time, he was screaming and yelling at every time I said to him at one point, I went, "Shoot me." What to I
Right,
was
but it just seems
like,
like
"Whoa."
the blame keeps changing to whoever,
Yeah.
isn't in
Yeah.
office.
Well, and I think too, like, I think for the rest of the country, maybe, Democrat and Republican is so clearly defined. And I don't think it is in the mountains. Like, I think in the mountains, people remember Democrats in some ways. I often hear this, you know, as the party that was opposed to Lincoln. Like, it's not assumed that Republican politics are racist
Right.
in the region, for starters, because people do associate Lincoln with the Republican Party. And so there's this like and then there's the fact that, like in my mom's family, her dad was a union, mine working Democrat and also a drunk. And her mom was a church going, conservative Republican who like like worked with the Millstone Sewing Center and Mabel Kaiser and all of that, this sort of like social justice in the mountains and following the fallout of coal companies pulling out of the region. So there's not this like clear delineation of like Republican equals racism, you know, Democrat equals, you know, um, good work. Like that just isn't that dichotomy doesn't exist in the mountains in the same way, you
No,
know?
no, it doesn't, and I think a lot of people are anti two-party system in this country, I think. I wouldn't say the majority is because I don't know everybody in the country, but I think most people are tired of it, and
Yeah.
it's interesting to me because, like, I remember growing up and I never really thought about it. Because also, I grew up in Floyd County and it was like, you got to be a registered Democrat in order to vote for anybody because everybody's running Democrat. There ain't no Republicans running. Like, that's a very common thing in the counties around here.
Yeah.
There's like one dominating party. So
Right.
I was just like, we're Democrats. And then I was like,
Right.
but my dad did not vote Democrat nationally. So it was like this very
Yeah.
confusing thing growing up. I'm like, oh, actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really
No.
matter what you think you are.
That's
Or,
kind of yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I know people in Letcher County who are registered Republicans so that they can sway the elections.
oh, yeah.
The way because that's the only option for swaying the election is to vote for the worst Republican candidate, knowing
Mm-hmm.
they won't win and kind of gutting them in that way, or sort of like standing up against them in that way. So, yeah, the whole dichotomy, like the Democrat Republican thing, it's like I wish the Democratic Party could figure out that the rest of the country is not going to be swayed through their, sort of polished democratic, when they go low, we go high baloney,
Yeah.
you know, um, that's not gonna fly like
Well,
in the mountains. And I wish they could figure that out and find a spine, because I feel like people in the mountains would respond to a spine, you
one,
know?
oh, yeah, absolutely. It's so winnable.
That's what they want. They want a spine, someone with a spine, you know?
Right. So my dad always said, you can't bullshit a bullshitter, which is something I think about
Yeah.
all the time. And that's sort of like, not to say that everybody that lives in the region is a bullshitter, but they know how to tell a tall tale. And I think
Oh
about that.
yeah.
Like,
Oh
anytime I see
yeah.
a politician, I'm like, we know what a liar is, you know? Like,
I know.
and
I know.
it's hard to like level that with Trump, right? But it's just like, I think most people know he's not telling the truth,
I think so too.
but
I've thought that for the longest time.
yeah,
But
they
they think
know.
the thing is he's got the I mean, part of the appeal of him. Like I had an uncle who I loved dearly who was like one of the kindest, sweetest people I've ever known in my life. And he died before this last election. But in the first round of Trump's presidency, he'd get so tickled. He thought he was so funny, and he thought how frustrated he made people was so funny too, the way that he was basically, like you said, full of shit. Like, my uncle knew that,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But there was something in him, and I do think this is maybe part of the problem that I would say I do have with Appalachian voters, which is that there is this part of us that I think is really mad, rightfully so, rightfully so, totally justified anger. But there is this part of us that wants to see it all come down, you know, because we have had to live in a world where it's all come down and had to raise kids there and had to go to school there and had to figure out how to eat there and it's been really difficult. It's a difficult place in complicated ways. It's a very difficult place to try to live, you know, for lots of different reasons. It's also, of course, beautiful and wonderful, and the only thing I'm interested in writing about. So I'm not trying to run it down or denigrate it at all, but it's hard. And it's a kind of hard that I think a lot of the country isn't even aware of. And I think that we're mad about that. I know I am. I'm angry that people don't know, how beautiful it is and how the citizens of Letcher County are treated um, by the rest of the world and sort of what they're up against if they want to do something different, better, if they want to, have access to better things, better social networks, um, I wish people understood what they're up against. And I think that, that makes us angry voters. And that if I have like to make a concession about hillbilly politics, that would be my concession is that there's a part of us that's just kind of like already lived through the apocalypse and is sort of like, maybe y'all get to see what it feels like now, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting sort of analysis. I've never heard anyone put it like that before, but I
I hope I don't sound crazy.
no. I think there's some
Like,
truth to that. There's definitely some
if
truth
you
to that.
can't afford eggs, who could afford eggs? And now everybody's, oh my God, I can't afford eggs. And it's like, yeah, join the rest of the world, like,
Yeah, I think that's real.
yeah.
And like, so back to your piece on Loretta, you sort of say like there's a scene in Coal Miner's Daughter that you watched where like she got in trouble and her dad had whipped her. It's sort of in the beginning, it's at the beginning of Coal Miner's Daughter. And then her mom had taken care of her. And like watching that, you thought her leaving was inevitable. Why? I'm wondering like why that?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this. I think, because this is just based on my own experience. Um, like, I don't mind not having things. And I don't mind, like, I don't have a dryer. I do my clothes on a clothesline. Like, I lead a pretty simple life. I'm very uncomfortable with money. We're talking about capitalism. I don't really like it makes me sometimes maybe not such a great business person with my writing because I just it's like it gives me the willies. I don't know how else to say it. The whole deal, And I think it's because I think that uh, capital is really dangerous. Um, it's a weapon in my mind, and it's like being asked to hold a gun. It's like I'm actually probably more comfortable with that, honestly. But you know, um, so anyway, it's my point is that I don't think it's poverty that chases people out of the mountains, uh, contrary to popular belief. I think it is realizing that you're not going to be able to be who you are there.
Mm.
And so, you know, obviously there was a star inside of Loretta, just waiting for somebody to tap it, to let her on a stage. And she talks like about how much she hated performing and how she'd throw up. And I have that same experience when I have to do in the beginning. I'm getting better at it, but I used to have that same experience when I was doing readings and stuff. Um, like it was not easy for me to step onto a kind of a stage and take up that space. But I also knew that what was in my heart was bigger than people were going to let me be, you know? And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
It makes me sad. It makes me really sad, the question and the answer both.
I interviewed Silas House on this podcast about Gene Ritchie. And there was something that Gene had wrote that really sort of spoke to that feeling of feeling like both an insider and an outsider at the same time. And Silas and I talked a little bit about that. And, he's like, that's the way he feels. That's the way I feel. I know that's the way my husband feels. And I don't know what it is. Part of me is like, is everybody feeling that way?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because we're put in such a box and we don't really understand. I think it's gotten better in recent years, right? Like seeing prominent figures from the region, outside of Dolly and Loretta, be really celebrated for being from this place. And
yeah, I think too.
I think it's really changed the way people look at it, and for better or for worse, the trad wife trend, that's been what living here's
Speaking
been
of
like
Loretta.
yeah, like Loretta, you would have loved the trad wife trend.
Yeah, she would have. And Dolly with her, loving open marriage or whatever the arrangement was with Carl Dean,
Yeah.
the whole, she would always admit to have relationships with people. And, it was like, yeah, it's just a different dealio,
Yeah.
right?
But it's interesting because it's like, oh, like this is a trendy way of living now. Like,
Yes.
this
Yes,
is
for sure.
on trend, and watching that, being from this place and like living here still, I'm like, man, okay, like my grandma would have been so cool if she
Oh, I
was
know.
still alive.
I know. Or how about I follow them all, but how about like Dollar Tree dinners and stuff? It's like, honey, I've been doing that since I was in 7th grade.
I know. How to only spend $20 at the grocery store. I'm like,
20's a lot.
I'm like, okay.
You're doing $20 for one meal?
Yeah.
What are you eating, gold?
I mean, it's true. It's like poverty is, I think it's like the general fear of recession too, right? Like we're trying to save all
Yeah.
this money. No one's making enough money. Like that's just a fact. Nobody's making enough money to live here. All of these billionaires are holding all the money in the world. And like, we're just trying to be like, you can go to the Dollar Tree and get a week's worth of groceries for $50. Here's how you do it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I
Yeah.
get,
Or like, what do you feed your family if all you have is these three things in your pantry or
yeah,
whatever?
yeah.
You know,
The answer
that's
is
enough.
cornbread.
Yeah, it's always cornbread.
The answer is always cornbread.
So true.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like and there's these places too that are like, which I love and despise at the same time. These like trendy restaurants in bigger Appalachian cities that are serving soup, beans, and cornbread, or like
Oh, I know.
salmon
I
patties, just
know.
like stuff that I'm like,
The ramps, the
ramps.
ramps,
Oh my god,
and I
morels,
know,
all the
morels.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
I know.
what are
It's
we
like we
doing?
didn't know. We were country when country wasn't cool, right? That's the Barbara Mandrell song.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this:
Like,
if it's somebody from the region and they're doing it and they're charging a bunch of people, more power to them. Sean Brock, do your
right.
thing. Like, please.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way. Yeah, I know. I also feel like in some ways, like Appalachians, myself included, have shot ourselves in the foot by like not participating, because I mean, that is the amazing thing about Dolly, and even though her capitalism, sometimes I have trouble with it. I do. Um, I admit it, like she knows how to wield that weapon, and she knows how to use it for good things. And I think, I wish more of us would get better at that and at being powerful, and at
Hmm.
stepping in spaces and taking up that space and exaggerating what we are instead of downplaying it. And, we could all learn really good lessons from Dolly. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I hope somebody will.
Right. I listen. This podcast is like my most outward facing thing, and it's really just fun for like I'm not making money off this. I have a Patreon. I don't make money. Like I'm just like this is
Uh,
fun. I've put way more money and time into it than anything I'm getting out of it. I think it's because I want, and I've had these thoughts about Loretta and Dolly and how they fit into my life because they do. They're a huge part of my life just growing up here and like being able to talk about that. And I think in that respect, I am a Loretta. Like to go back to the beginning of the podcast,
yeah.
I am a Loretta. I'm not doing this. I'm not being forced by someone like she was forced to go on stage. I think it's important to like have these conversations, and also I will retreat afterwards. Like
Yes.
I am
Yes.
retreating afterwards. I don't want to go on anyone else's podcast. Like that is not my desire. It's in it because
Yeah.
I've sort of wrestled with that. I was like, I do love to I like not love. I like to do public facing things, but on my own terms. And I feel like that was sort of maybe towards the end of her career, more of Loretta's things. Like she's doing public facing things on her own terms. I saw Loretta. I saw her a few times, but I went to the Ryman and saw her for one of her birthday shows.
Oh, wow.
And it was
Oh my
so good. And I was just like, I remember that
jealous.
still. And like, it's just one of those things where she didn't get out much. She didn't
Right.
play much at that point, but she was like, it felt like she wanted to do this. And that's why she was
Mhm.
there. And that's it. With Dolly, it's like very much fueled by the dollar, it feels like. I mean, she's not
Yeah.
performing really anymore, but like if you go down to
Right.
Pigeon Forge.
Oh, I know. I know. Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, it's like she did create an enemy there for sure in her place. Like she made a cloud city,
Yeah.
She really did. Um, but also, like, I have to admit, I would miss Pine Mountain as it is if there was an amusement park sitting on top of it, you know?
100%. Yeah.
That would be devastating,
I
you know?
I would rather, to those people in Johnson County that are upset that they could possibly change the name to the state park, would you rather be exploited by someone else as you've been exploited
Right.
for decades and decades, or would you rather honor this
Oh, I
person
know.
from your community who I will argue has done a lot for the region in just
Just
um,
being who she
being
is.
who she is and like showing that we're not what the nation thinks that we are. We're much more complicated. We're much more, things are way more nuanced here than people want to believe. And I think with songs like The Pill and, you know, she's had more than that song banned from radio, right? It's just like with these
Oh,
things
yeah.
that she
Yeah.
was saying, like,
She had a song about rape and I think getting pregnant, and I mean, I'm trying to remember the name of the song off the top of my head. It had something to do with wings, angel wings or
oh, yeah,
something. Um, and, that's a devastating song, you know?
right. And it's just
But
like,
also more than that, like making like, I think taking the stereotype that she was sort of up against and leaning into it,
yeah,
I think is probably the thing that I love and admire and, like, pattern myself after. It's like, if the expectation is for me to water down who I am, then I'm gonna be even more concentrated, you
right,
know?
right.
And that was her, like, real rebellion, and people didn't know that, like, she was making a choice to talk about, moments where she'd been really dumb. Like, that was a choice she made, you know? How she didn't even know what this cost, or she didn't even know how this worked, or what have you. My mom used to do that all the time with people. And sometimes it was just to feel them out and how stupid they thought she was.
Yes.
You know,
Oh, I love
it's
to
like
do
a
that.
test. They didn't know she was where it's like, oh, you think that's how dumb you think I am. Oh, okay. Now I know where we stand, you
Hmm.
know. Um, I catch myself doing the same thing sometimes.
I love to do it. People automatically hear
Yeah.
this accent and they're like, well, and
Oh, I
I'm like,
know.
try
Say
me.
it again. Say that again.
Ugh,
I
that makes me
know.
so mad.
You sound so cute. Say it again. It's like,
Ugh.
oh,
I was out in Arizona, I think, like last week or 2 weeks ago, and I ordered a Sprite, and I said, "Can I get Sprite?" And they were like, "What?" I was like, "Sprite, please." And they said, "Do you mean Sprite?" And I was like, "No, I mean Sprite." Like, it follows you wherever you go, but also it's like, first part of me is like,
did you?
you know who Dolly Parton is. You know who Loretta Lynn is.
That's
Shut
right.
your mouth.
Right. Well, there's a funny TikToker that I follow. I think her name is Deb. Anyway, I think she might be from Floyd County. She's from maybe Ashland. I can't remember where, but she's from Eastern Kentucky somewhere. And her niece videotapes her talking. And she and her sister were talking one day, and her sister was saying how she can't go back to Indiana ever again because the last time she was there, she tried to buy a bag of ice and
I know where that's going.
I thought she was saying ass.
Oh my God.
She can't show her face in Indiana anymore because
This
she
is
tried to buy a bag of ass. Yeah.
this is one thing, like, if the oligarchs, if the tech bros are gonna take us over, y'all, you gotta get that text to speech like working for us. That's gotta be our trade
I
off.
can't use it.
I don't
I
use
can't
it.
use it. My
There's no
kids
way.
do. No, my kids do, but it's like, guys, it just doesn't hear me. Like, it
No, it's
doesn't
got
know
me
what I'm
saying
talking
all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, I'm just like, who? Like,
about.
what? This can't be real. And like, for a long time, I had to
You
use
see
the
that?
Australian Siri because that's what understood me the best.
Oh, I should try that. I didn't know that would work.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say too, though, that's something that I really loved about Loretta too, is the dialect that she used in her songwriting
Yes.
was, I think, like, sonically closer to, um, like, the real Appalachian dialect I grew up with, whereas I always felt like Dolly's was maybe a little more Southern, a little more palatable, a little more Southern Belle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Loretta's was harder, you know? It was a harder sound and a more nasal kind of twang and, clipped versus, tarred,
Mm-hmm.
tarred, you know?
She was rhyming words that
So,
would not otherwise rhyme if you
yeah, yeah,
said them
yeah.
quote unquote
Which
correctly.
is downright Shakespearean,
Yeah, it is. So there's this I watched this PBS documentary about Loretta. I can't remember what it's called, but I watched it years ago. And she talked about going to the White House, and I think it was under Obama that she got the Presidential Medal of the Arts, who
That's
she
right.
also definitely voted for because she met him. Which I just love that her
Yeah.
being like, if I meet him, I'm gonna vote for him. Um, so she is at the dinner and she's talking about they served biscuits, and she is like, I think it was one of her daughters, maybe one of the twins, was saying they were kind of embarrassed because she was like, these biscuits didn't rise right. And she was telling the people that were serving, she was like, you didn't get your biscuits to rise right. If you let me come back in the kitchen,
Right,
I'll tell you how you need to cut them right. Like, I'll tell you how to cut them. I'll tell you what you need, all this stuff. And I love that because that's just so, uh, like that's the person I want in my life. But also it kind of reminded me of, at the end of your piece, you talk about your mom and you talk about going on vacation, and she sort of had a panic attack.
Hilton Head. Yeah, Hilton Head. She was impressed.
Yeah, she was not impressed. And she also sort of, I think the thing she said was like, no corn or tomatoes growing anywhere. How do people live like this?
Oh, I know. I know. Would get
And
her so wrapped. Be around people that didn't need to grow things. It was like, "What is wrong with you?" She couldn't, which is funny because it's not like my mom was any big, huge gardener, It wasn't she wasn't, like, out working in, like, the fields or anything in her around our house. She barely had petunias and she did, like, tomato plants, and my dad did, he always had, like, a vegetable patch, and my grandma did too, but that was the thing, was everybody did,
mm-hmm,
everybody had a plant on their porch, everybody had something growing in their windowsill, you know, and of course, um, like, I live in the country in Indiana, and, I can't conceive of not having green around me all the time.
yeah,
Like, I can't even imagine that. I really couldn't do it. I know that about myself. I get agitated when I don't hear birds, when there's not, like, this sort of calm in the yard, outside my house. I don't really like having neighbors, that I can see. I'm friends with my neighbors, but, like, I like to not be able to see them from where I am,
mm-hmm,
you know? Um, and I think all of that is like, that's exactly what you're talking about with like, there's a sort of pride in understanding yourself as a country woman, kind of, as someone who doesn't just, like, survive in the country, but prefers it, you
yes,
know? think there's a side in that that I just always admire, you know.
Yeah, and I think there's so many women that I know in my life, and just people in general, really, that remind me of Loretta, sort of like how your mom reminds you of Loretta.
Yeah.
And I also think that's why your piece hit me, because I was like, oh, yeah, look, I don't know a
Yeah.
Dolly. I know one person that might be a Dolly, close, but also, like,
Yeah.
I know them well enough to know that they're mostly Loretta privately. You know?
Deep down.
Push
It's so
comes to
funny that you
shove.
say that because people, like, even people that have read this piece that I wrote that you're talking about, I think because I've always had my hair bleached, you know, and because my persona when I'm on the stage, goofy, just as a defense mechanism, you know, like I'm just trying to survive out there, but I can be kind of goofy. And so there's always this conversation about, we know you love Dolly. We know how much, you know, you're like, everyone always assumes that I'm team Dolly, you know? And I think that was another reason I wanted to write the piece, was because it's like, you know, it's not, I mean, again, I love her. I admire her. I, in many ways, wish I were more like her, you know, and yet at the same time, it's like her life is not, it doesn't really mirror my experience,
Right.
you know? And for the most part, I would say that that has to do specifically with the way that she sort of, like, the sexual freedom that she seemed to feel, you know, in the way she dressed and the way she moved and how flirtatious she was, the rumors about her and Porter Wagner, you know, like, there was always scandals surrounding Dolly, and she always seemed to be completely comfortable with that. And that's just not how I grew up.
No,
So, you know,
same
no,
here. And
yeah.
I also, for the record, love Dolly. Like, that is a Dolly cast iron skillet right there. That is, you see the butterfly
With the butterflies.
wings. Yeah.
Butterflies. I
I'm
know. She
I'm a Dolly fan, and it's more of a
Oh, me too.
um an appreciation, but also like an admiration. Like, how do we grow up in the same region and you are like this?
I know.
It's
She's sort of like
fascinating.
Appalachian Lady Gaga a little
Oh my
bit or
god.
something.
Yeah, it's like,
Even down
wow.
to the drag, you know, like she'll talk about being in drag in the same way that Gaga will talk about it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there Loretta sits with her like lace collar up to here, you
Yeah,
know,
and
like,
her ball gowns.
yeah.
Her
The
ball
ball gown.
gowns that she
Love the ball.
always jokes about. Like, she would joke on stage, like, I had a big dinner. I was shocked I even got this thing on tonight.
What a doll,
I
you know,
know.
for real.
I love
For real.
her. And I loved reading your piece, and everybody should read it. That's
Oh,
my.
thank you for talking to me about it. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I feel like I got kind of political there. So,
No, don't worry
I'm
about
not
it. I think
thinking about what I
everybody's
said. I was just
everybody's gotten
just
political on the show because it turns out talking about women is inherently
is
political.
amen. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Shoot. You could have gone all day without saying that.
Thank you so much for listening again this week. This podcast is produced and edited by me, Jessica Miles. Our artwork is created by Hayden Miles, and our theme music is produced by Kenny and Hayden Miles. If you'd like to support the show, you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Mountain Laurels Podcast. You can also follow the show on Instagram and Blue Sky. The season finale of Mountain Laurels will be in 2 weeks. So please do not forget to send in a story about your mama or mama figure in your life. There won't be a new show next week, but I'll be back in 2 weeks with what I hope will be a beautiful collection and collage of stories from our listeners. Thanks.